There's the.
We're gonna kick her off her, my grandson loved it, and my granddaughter.
Who's Baby Shark?
That was the live screen.
Oh, I thought it was Ronnie.
So Ronnie and Ryan are both online.
Yep.
I don't see people, but it's 6 o'clock. So I think we should probably call the meeting to order. Okay. I'll begin with roll call. So we have Ronnie who's present. Yes, you're muted.
I'm here.
Brian, you're also muted.
I'm here.
Okay, I see Crystal. Can you hear us, Crystal? You're muted.
Yeah, I can hear everyone.
And in the room, we have Art and myself, and Theo does not appear to be here yet. So first thing, motion to approve the minutes. In the minutes folder, we have minutes for 3 months worth of minutes to approve. Do I have a motion to approve those?
A motion to approve the minutes.
And
I'll
second.
second.
Okay. So minutes are approved. Any objections?
Thank you, Linda.
Yes, thanks, Linda. So our next item is paperless Hudson, I believe.
Yeah, I'll just run with it. So my apologies for not getting this into a document, but I did email all of you this afternoon with the list of items that would need to be updated in the, give me a moment. So there are some charter amendments that we need to make and one code amendment. So I'm not going to read all of these to you, but it's my understanding that this is a pretty holistic collection of everything that would need to be amended. So I'm thinking that I will put that into one resolution, amending all of these things, and hopefully get that in review for the next tech committee, which is later this month.
Perfect.
If you're gonna go ahead, I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump in. If you're gonna go ahead and do that, you're gonna need, I know you mentioned resolution, you're gonna need local laws on these. Particularly because you're amending the charter and the code. So if you wanna, throw them over to me and I can, get them formatted and put all that, pro forma language that we need to get in there, I can do that too.
Is the email that you have, Crystal, sufficient? I don't, if this group has nothing specific, then I don't.
Yes.
I did not see that email.
I sent it at like 3:47.
Okay.
So just while Margaret is pulling that up, Vicky, I know you're on, but basically there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 charter amendments and 1 code amendment. All basically centered, most are like notice, one is notice of election result, one is notice of special meeting to make appointments, one is noted new bonds may be required, one is notification of election, and the other is special meetings. And so all of those would basically need to be amended to allow for electronic communication to meet that requirement. So right now, in order to fulfill these requirements, one has to physically mail something to the addresses of the affected parties. This would basically amend these such that email is sufficient under these, under all of this stuff. The code amendment has to relates to the disposal of records, requiring written consent to each department prior to the destruction of records. So we would also look to update that as well. Ron, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that actually, I haven't looked at the document that you shared, so if it's already on there, I apologize. I just wanted to make sure that the language is clear that obviously it's a opt-out thing. So like if there's future members who wish to receive those in mail, they, I wanted to make sure that the language is stated in a way that you have to opt out of the mailing, not automatically be enrolled into an electronic form. Just so that we're, we're future ready for, especially as people get older, or some people may not be as tech savvy as others. We don't want to, disclude them or preclude them from serving in the city. So am I making myself clear? I don't know.
I think that would be addressed in how the language is updated in the
Yeah.
charter and in the local laws, correct, Crystal?
Yes, and I'm glad you made that clear, because one of the questions I was going to have and a recommendation I was going to make was exactly that, this be permissive rather than mandatory.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I'll make sure that the language is clear on that.
And
Thank
Linda.
you, Crystal.
So if you're at 6:05, Theo is present.
Got it.
Yeah, sorry, everyone. I had some connection trouble.
I saw it.
Anything else on paperless Hudson?
That is all I have from my end, and then I guess Crystal, I'll look forward to hearing from you.
Yes, when's the tech committee meeting?
Couple weeks.
Okay, now, did you say you wanted these for the tech committee meeting? You want to make sure you've got them ready for then, right? I just want to make sure I've got the time frame right.
Just to have eyes on them at that meeting, I think that would be a good precursor to bring them for the informal.
Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure.
I should go through legal before going to the.
If you want.
Yeah, I think this group should look at it. Because the
That's
tech
fair.
group, should look at it from the point of view of whether it's accomplishing on the tech side, what you wanted to accomplish, and since we meet the week before the
Informal.
full meeting,
Yeah, so we can do,
we could have a look at it here.
yeah, no, that all makes sense.
Right, and
Yeah.
then we'll-
Yeah, let's do that.
We would sign off on it.
Perfect.
Does that make sense? I'm trying this thing off. Sorry, I forgot to turn my sound off. So while we're talking about tech issues, this is something that came up at a meeting last week and in correspondence from a constituent. In attending these meetings virtually, I see that the thing is saying closed captioning has been put on. So that is something that someone remotely accesses and can actually get closed captioning if they
Yeah.
choose.
So it's enabled now for this
Okay.
meeting, and anyone at any time can request it if it happens on.
Okay, and the other question that was raised, apparently there is a potential option for a transcript at the end of the meeting, that you can generate a transcript. Is that something that you're aware of?
Yes, it's possible to download the automated transcript that's being rolled out right now. That's a text file.
Got it. And then that would be, you have to do it, I think, right after the meeting,
Right, before closing.
before closing. So I think for Linda and Tracy and other people, having that would be really helpful.
Sure.
While we're on that, Margaret, I think maybe a best practice might be, if we're going to rely on that transcript, whoever's in City Hall is going to have to like introduce themselves before they speak every time, because it just shows City Hall as the people speaking. It doesn't actually break it down into the different people.
Not so much thinking of it as something that you would rely on, because Linda and Tracy and everybody, they take very good notes of who is speaking. It's more that, back in the day, many, many years ago, when I used to be responsible for quality meetings, we recorded everything. These were just in-person meetings, we recorded everything. We used that when we relied on our notes, but then we were able to use that if we wanted to check something afterwards. It just is helpful to the person trying to do minutes.
I just mean if it is a ADA thing, I would imagine if it's someone that is looking at the transcript specifically from an ADA perspective, they would want to know who is saying what, especially in the city hall. You know, when I'm speaking right now, it's going to say Emroni is saying all of this, but when you say it or Art says it, it's not going to say. See what I
So
mean?
it's not so much the transcript, it's actually the closed captioning. So if I am attending this and I have a hearing problem, and I'm
Mhm.
relying on the captioning, I
Yes.
won't necessarily know who's speaking. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yes, exactly.
Gosh, okay.
Unless it's somebody that is dialing in. If they are dialing in, you can tell who it is that is speaking.
Okay. I have to think about that. I think it'd be very cumbersome for us to constantly introduce ourselves. Okay, so then we have items from the prior meeting. So in our last meeting, right before the meeting, it might have been like the day before, Crystal had shared with us a number of, I think it was 4 documents, Crystal. These were related to updates to local laws. Although there were multiple documents, really the bottom line is updating charter to replace planning commission with planning board, a local law relating to the residency requirements. I think that's one we want to talk about to make sure that we understand exactly how the public officers are defined, and it's specific to expanding the residency for the city council, I believe, the public officer. And then the local law renewing the lodging tax, which we couldn't act on last time because it hadn't yet been passed at state level. So now we're ready to work on that this evening. So what order would you like to go in, Crystal? You want to start with the first one's very easy, the planning commission, planning board updating the charter. You want to start with that?
Remove
Sure.
references.
Yeah. So you want to pull up that document? So I hope everybody had a chance to read this. I personally saw absolutely nothing of note or concern here. Does anyone have any questions regarding this?
Seems pretty straightforward.
Hold on, Margaret. I'm just. Yep. Keep going.
So. Okay. So, Tom, just point of order here. Do we need to approve these, or are we just going to vote to pass them on to the full council next week?
Yeah.
We're just gonna. Okay, right. So anybody, no objections. This will be going to the full council next week.
Yep, no, no objections. Tom, do we need the motion in second?
Yeah. Yeah, motion to send to full council.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay. Our next item in the agenda. This is the one regarding residency. So Crystal, there are a couple of documents relating to this. I think this is the one that had the OAG document, and there were a couple of different pieces that went into this update. So do you want to walk us through each of the documents?
We're
Yeah,
talking about sorry, Crystal, we're talking about the OAG opinions, the legal advisor, and the legal advisor retained.
Yeah, and it's
residency.
it's expanding the residency for the public officer who is the legal advisor, but not for any other public
I
officer.
remember this. Okay,
Right,
got it.
yeah. Okay, go ahead, Crystal.
So this resolution, all 4 of these resolutions were a product of the mayor's office. The Corporation Counsel, Cheryl Roberts, had done extensive work on these and had performed all of the research on these. And one of the questions that had come up with that she had been working on was the fact that first of all, addressing the residency requirement for the legal advisor of the city, because it was fairly limited in the city charter, and to allow for it to expand, because to be perfectly honest, the city of Hudson doesn't have a ton of attorneys that live within the city boundaries. So to be able to expand that to the county, to Columbia County, to allow for a greater pool and to be able to broaden that net for being able to look for that legal advisor position. And that's really what was the impetus. My understanding is the impetus of this specific local law. I'm just making sure I'm looking at the right one.
Can we pull that up?
Yep. Yeah, no, you've got it up. Yep. I just wanted to make sure I had one up on my screen too. And then the clarification for the status of attorneys who are not public officers, that was because there was a question as to, is a legal advisor a public officer? It typically would be, and that's usually within the charter. And then there are other attorneys that are hired by the city, such as myself, Victoria Polidero for the planning board. And we are essentially contract workers. We're not employees of the city. We're not actually deemed public officers. And it was to clarify that status, and that status is different from the legal advisor status. And that's really what this was doing, because the city had in practice one thing, and it needed to clean up how the language was in the charter.
So the legal advisor, that is a correct, accurate term for what is soon not to be Cheryl's current role, right?
Yes, the legal advisor is a charter position appointed by the mayor. Cheryl was in it. Now it's going to be, I believe it's Andy Howard who's it now. I don't think that's official now. So yeah, it's clarifying that position.
And then that was one of the documents. Can you pull up the document that speaks to, I think it's the public officers one. Lists all of the various, why do we need a bingo inspector?
I believe the bingo inspector was already in the charter.
Well, I know it's like, dust on streets. It's one of the many items. There were a couple of things in here that were strange.
You don't appreciate the bingo
sorry?
inspector? You don't appreciate the bingo inspector?
No, I do
Yeah,
not.
bingo might make a comeback. Who knows?
So this is defining them, but this is not, is this where we find the language that says that the residency issue applies only to the legal advisor?
The residence issue is the residency for the legal advisor was in the last resolution that you had up.
Okay. So that is the only place where that will come up. And then this is just defining who the officers are.
Yeah.
What changed from what was there before?
I have to go back to, hold on. I sent a memo to the legal committee about that before the last meeting, but I want to just make sure I've got it up in front of me. Hold up.
I was a little bit confused as to why we needed this document.
Well, and that's something, so again, this was, Cheryl had gone in and done a ton of research on this and had the background on it. And this came from a lot of communications that she had with both the getting opinions from the Attorney General's office and also speaking with NICOM on a variety of different issues. And that's where this came from. So, and unfortunately, I was not a party to really any of that process. So if there's more to it, I can go back and discuss it with Cheryl a little bit further. But I don't.
Well,
I don't have more information on it. My understanding is that really it started with the legal advisor situation and making sure that was clarified about being a public officer.
But since this is to add certain officers to the list of public officers, I kind of would like to know which of these who got added and what was before.
Yeah, give me a minute and I can pull up the notes where I think I listed it.
So it's here in section 2. The term legal counsel was originally in this section, and that's replaced with the
So
phrase city legal advisor.
this is the only revision, which is why this is necessary to go hand in hand with the rest.
Yeah.
Okay,
To be specific
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the legal advisor rather than all of our legal.
okay, so that's why we needed this one. Do we have a motion to move this one forward to the full council?
I'll motion.
Ryan, it's your turn.
I was gonna say I'll be your second. Yes.
Okay, and then we have, let's see, we look for the residency.
can I just pause and have you guys go back for just 1 second? I want to make sure that you're also aware that for the public officers, I had to just pull up my quick notes on it. For the public officers, it didn't just add the legal advisor to it, it also adds the code enforcement officer and the assistant code enforcement officer. And that's because they actually do take oaths of office. And that's part of the requirements for a public officer. So those were added into our charter because they technically are public officers.
And those were the only other changes.
Yes, yes, code enforcement officer, assistant code enforcement officer, and legal advisor. The title of the legal advisor changing, yeah.
So we had just been operating without those roles officially in the charter prior to this.
Well, they were official roles. They just weren't listed as public officers, which they really
Oh,
should
okay.
have been. Yeah.
I see that. I got you. Thank you.
Am I getting confused, or we're only expanding the territory or the residency requirement for only the legal counsel and not the other officers, right? Those are two different things, right?
Only
Those are
the
two-
legal-
Yes, only the legal advisor is getting expanded.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
I believe that was in the first document that we looked at. Okay.
Yep.
I just wasn't sure why we needed this one. Do you want to go on to the next one, Michael? Okay, so this one, again, what exactly are we amending here?
So what this one does is it clarifies the distinction with retained counsel versus legal advisor, which is not something that our charter did before. And it's to, again, clarify, you've got your legal advisor, it's going to act as the public officer, what its responsibilities are, and then the retained counsel, such as myself, such as Victoria, and the fact that we are essentially additional as needed. The legal advisor, though, is a charter created position. The retained counsel is something that is, appointed and used as needed.
And in this, we did not expand in any way. With the mayor's office, I think, and the council has always had the ability to retain counsel. So we did not make any changes to the ability of the city, like we didn't expand it in any way, correct?
Not at all. None of that changes.
Everything just as needed or as, yeah.
Question, I mean, it is in the charter that the mayor does hire all attorneys.
It is. That's what's in the charter, yes. So
Sorry,
this does not change that.
All attorneys are hired by the mayor.
Okay, including, right. Okay.
And just to also say, the other reason for this too is that you've got your legal advisor that is subject to the residency requirements. By showing this distinction, it also just clarifies what is already existing law, that your retained counsel essentially is able to be retained throughout anywhere in New York State. You can go to anywhere in the state and hire retained counsel. It doesn't specify this in the law, but by separating the retained counsel from the legal advisor, that comports with what is already New York State law. So because there were some questions coming up in the mayor's office, and this was clarifying that.
So if I understand you correctly, the residency for the legal advisor, we expanded to Columbia County, I can't remember what the residency was expanded to, what distance was.
Yeah.
Columbia County.
Okay. We expanded that, but in the event that for some reason we needed legal counsel in Buffalo, we're not constrained from getting legal counsel in Buffalo if there was some issue that we needed to address.
Exactly. Exactly.
So there is no limit on where advisors, retained counsel reside.
Exactly.
And that has been the case before, so that's fine. Anybody got questions on this? So we're going to forward to the full council. Art, it's your turn.
I'd like to make a motion to move this forward to the full council, Margaret.
And Ryan, it's your turn.
Mm,
Do we have assigned seats now? Is that what's going on?
yes, exactly.
Yes, we do. Well,
No
you're,
favorites in this.
honey, you're somewhere out in outer space, so, you know.
Wait, everybody is talking over everyone. I can't hear what we need. Sorry.
Just need a second to move this to the full council.
Then I will second, yes.
So was that it, Crystal, on the documents relating to that whole issue of residency? I think it was.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay, so then we have, do you want to walk us through the OIG opinions? That was just the background to all of this as far as I read it.
Those are just the backgrounds that Cheryl had gotten, and she wanted to make sure that the council had those as well.
Okay. So then that gets us to the extending, and I did actually, thank you for sending me the revisions. I did actually go through this the old-fashioned way, side by side. I have one general observation. It's not different from what it originally was, and I think when you were typing it, you were just typing up whatever was previously there. It's a stylistic thing. Sometimes in the document, numbers are written out as words with the number in parentheses after the word. It doesn't seem to abide. It's not based on whether it's under 10 or over 10. If that's a stylistic thing that can happen, it just seems to be inconsistent as to how numbers are going to be referenced in the document. So it's not important, but I think stylistically it would be good to have it consistent throughout. That was just one observation. On the first page, under 1, 2, 3, under the fourth whereas, it was added, and it may have been added in one of the interim amendments, Crystal, where it says, Chapter 4 of New York laws of 2006 until December 1, 2022. Should that be December 1, 2022, or should that be the 3-year span of this particular extension, which would be 2025?
When I did this, I actually went back and forth to check, and it expires on December 1st, 2022. And I had to go back and cross-check how they were enacted, but I can double check it again.
At the end of the document, it's very clear that this is going to be, it's under sunset. It says local law shall remain in full force and effect until December 1, 2025. So it seems to me that I thought should have been 2025, because we're doing this, the city of Hudson has received authorization from the state to extend the lodging tax, set forth, etc. Until December 1, 2022. I found that, can you check that?
Oh, no, I see what you're saying, that the first whereas needs to be changed. I see what you're saying. Yep, nope, you're right. That needs to say 2025. It's this, the law that's in effect now expires December 1st, 2022.
Yeah, that's the one above it, but this one I think should have been 2025. The only, I see that things got moved around to be in chronological, in alphabetical order from the original, so it's a lot tidier. And then the only other thing, well, I have 2 other things. On page 5, under 27B, about 6 or 7 lines into that paragraph.
You said page
It
5.
talks about social security number. So you see where that is?
Yep.
Okay, it says social security number or employment identification number. I am in the habit of seeing tax identification number rather than employment identification. Should that be employment or should it be tax?
If it's looking for the EIN, it would be employment identification number. The EIN is, so I mean, I'll have to go back to see what the purpose of the original one is, but EIN would be the employment identification number.
Okay. I'm just in the habit of seeing TINs rather than EINs. And then I had only one other observation. Now, obviously, it's changed from the original to reflect the change in funding to the tourist board, and then the tourist board was eliminated. I do want to talk about item 27532 in a moment, but the other revision, Crystal, that it's under 27533, section C. This is the only place where I saw this. In this paragraph, where it talks about the treasurer, it says he. Yes, he deems it necessary in order to protect him, and he may issue a warrant, he may do that or the other. It's the only section in the whole thing where that happens.
Okay.
We'd rather make it he/she or they, one or the other, but that was the only section where I found that.
Okay.
Otherwise, the only thing, and I know that this is not different from the revisions that have previously occurred, but on the disposition, 27532, disposition of revenues. In the original, this paragraph in the original, because at that time there was a tourist board and the city council was going to have some control in allocating monies and so forth. In the original references, there was reference to the city council. As it stands now, it will be apportioned out during the budget process. So, Tom, you probably have the history on this, but is it possible to have this paragraph include some input from the city council, or was that something that was discussed at length and that was changed? I can go back to the original.
No, the idea is that it's, money that goes to the general fund is determined first by the PDA. So the city council will have some say in it, but not in, I'm not sure what you're asking. because-
So the original language, so the whole section about the tourist board, that's been eliminated, that's
Right.
fine. The original language here said, let's see, the, received by the treasurer under the SAR shall be paid into the treasury of the city and shall be credited to and deposited in the general fund thereof, or as otherwise directed by resolution of the city council, provided, however, that the city shall be authorized to retain a portion of such revenue in such amount as it deems reasonably sufficient to defray the necessary expenses of the city in administering this tax, including without limitation. And I was wondering if we could bring back in language that specifically references the council. And also we seem to have dropped the language relating to amounts that the city deems necessary to defray expenses from the original to this. So I don't know if we could talk about that.
I think Margaret, sorry, go ahead.
I'm not sure I understand what you're looking for. I mean,
I think I have an idea what Margaret is asking. I think she's asking for the council to have power to maybe find ways to spend that money. But by default, the council is the purse holder for the city, so we always have authority to.
That is part of it. So Ronnie, the reason I went back to the original and I did it side by side, and the original language actually referenced the council. But the other thing the original language referenced was that such revenue shall be authorized, however, that the city shall be authorized to retain a portion of such revenue in such amount as it deems reasonably sufficient to defray the necessary expenses of the city in administering this tax. So that piece about the city being able to claw back money to defray cost is gone from the current version.
oh, well,
But if I may, that's okay. So if you look at what's in there now, it says that it can be used for any municipal purpose, including portions allocated for, marketing of the city of Hudson. The way it's written now with after the amendments, it automatically allows for whatever monies to come in to be able to be used to defray, the cost associated with administrating the tax. It can be used essentially for any purpose at all, and it's going to be the city council, because you are the, as Ronnie said, holder of the purse strings. You're going to just determine where it's going and how it's going.
I would like to see explicit language saying that the city, whatever the council, this council or future council decides they want to do. I would like to see language that explicitly says the city can,
Well, that's how the budgeting process works.
okay,
That's the problem. I mean, you can argue during the budgeting process that we should set aside some money. Or you can see if we need the BEA set aside money. Or you can just wait till after the budget and request that money be allocated.
so in the budget process, if the treasurer's office says, running this program is costing us 50,000.
Right.
They would want a line item in the budget to say we need 50,000 to deal with the lodging tax.
Yeah.
That's how that would work.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm happy with that. Those were my issues, so I just want to go around and see what anybody else has. Theo, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question about section 275.23 on page 3, subsection B, where it says the tax imposed by this article shall not apply to a single room. This might be just a basic question, but is that saying like a room within your unit, or that is your primary residence, or does that mean if the tax is for a unit in a home that is also your primary place of residence?
I'm reading of that because it's a single room occupied for short-term lodging, provided that such single room is in the host's sole residence, and also the egress to that room has to be through the host's primary residence, identical to the access and egress portal used by the host. So this would be like a traditional old-fashioned bed and breakfast where you're literally staying in somebody's home.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. I guess I was.
And that home's your primary residence.
But not only it does have to be a
Right,
primary
yeah.
residence, the guest has to come in through your
Your
front door
door.
and leave, it's a completely traditional setup.
Okay, I was just thinking because I know there like a lot of Airbnbs are in people's basements, but just thinking back through that now and through that language, I guess there's also the basement mode of egress is used as the main entrance for that Airbnb, so that would still be taxable under this. So anyway, that clears it up. That was my only question.
You can't have a little apartment that has its own entrance and exit separate from your own home. That would go under the taxable situation.
Right.
And that language, by the way, Theo, is identical to the original language.
Great. Thanks for the clarification.
Do we have any other questions? Ronnie, do you have any questions on this one? No?
Not on my end, Margaret.
Okay. Ryan has none. Art? Okay.
No, well, actually, I did just
Yep.
in that one question, that one section that we were talking about regarding. You were just talking about it before Ronnie's. It was, what was.
275.32, the disposition of revenues.
Revenue.
275.32, give me 1 second. Yes, the disposition of revenues. Why are we making a distinction in this clause for the purpose of marketing the city?
I know, I don't like that either.
That was just a remnant. Really.
Can we just
No,
say,
actually,
Well, actually, if I could just say, when we actually went through the original, this was an amendment that happened this past March. And there was discussion at the city council level about wanting to make sure there was still at least language in there talking about why, the purpose of these funds. I think that if I recall correctly, the council was actually discussing that.
You are correct, Crystal.
That's where that came from.
was because of the changes in the tourism board and the fact that monies were not going to be directly allocated. for
That's
tourism.
correct. That's correct, Margaret.
I mean, all that I'm saying is that the allocation during the general budget process for any municipal purpose, period. Why do we need to over specify? It just seems
That's
like
the way it was originally written in March, and it was requested that there would be additional language to talk about marketing of the city.
That's like the tourist related businesses.
I think it's more of a gentle suggestion that we try to do it. I don't think it really imposes a duty on us to make sure any of that portion is, set aside. It's not earmarking, I would say.
Correct, Ronnie. And then
100%.
the other part of it is that the initial lodging tax, in general, especially in the wake of the short-term rental thing, it was for the fact that it was promised by the council that had originally passed it, the monies would be used for it. And then there was an element of continuity per what Crystal was saying, that we wanted to ensure that when it was rewritten, that it can be suggested that the funds can still be used for that purpose. So
It was 50% up to a certain cap.
that's correct.
cool.
Anything else? Rob?
No,
So I don't, other than Crystal, if we could correct the he language
Mhm.
and just standardize how numbers are referenced in the text. Those are the only revisions that I had. Oh, and also the date on in the first page.
Absolutely.
So with those revisions, are we okay sending this to the full council? Great, Theo, that comes up, Theo, was a motion to say yes, we'll move it to the full council. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, Ronnie.
That's why I was asking if there's assigned seats. I wanted to get in on the section.
There you go.
And I actually moved into the, Earth. As you can see, Margaret, I'm no longer in space.
San Francisco. We have, Nikki has his hand up from the public.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Is it the case that the chief of police is not defined as a public officer in the case of the new law?
Crystal, do you want to field that one?
Yeah, I've got to pull it up real quick.
No
I
problem.
don't know off the top of my head. Hold on, I had them up before and I think I closed them all. Give me a minute. Oh. I apologize. I closed everything. I closed those resolutions. So now I've got to try to.
You want,
Grab them
Michael,
again.
you
Yeah,
grab
it says such number of policemen as the commissioner of police shall appoint.
Thank you.
So then the chief is included as someone who would be appointed by the commissioner
Correct,
as a public officer?
yes.
Okay, so my second question is the main point of the distinction between public officers and people who are not public officers the fact that public officers may be subject to a residency requirement and those who are not public officers are not subject to that requirement? Is that the main?
Public officers have to take an oath,
Okay,
which is not something that all of the employees have to do for the
okay,
city.
okay. And then I would also like to ask, if possible, and if it's already there and I missed it, I apologize, that a list of the legal team of the city be posted on the city website, the current legal team, including the legal advisor and the subsidiary attorneys.
I mean, Ron, I will say we can make that ask. We certainly can post council's elements, but if you're requesting the city ones, which are mayorally appointed,
Right.
that's a question for the mayor's office.
Okay, thanks. And finally, I'd like to thank you for enabling live transcript
Oh, no problem.
of the meeting today.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the public? Okay, let me go to my agenda here. Okay, new business. I put this in just because there's a topic that we are probably going to need to look into. I'm trying to find, I've printed it all. Let me see. And it relates to the chain retail issue. Yeah, formula retail. So this is local law number 3. I didn't send it out to everybody, but I just would like you to take a look at this and start thinking about it. It's local law number 3 from 2018. And the language is in fact included in the charter. It comes directly from the local law. And there's been, there's been some discussion recently around whether or not this is really that well written. One potential issue that it doesn't address, for example, is if you have a business that starts in Hudson, it's where their flagship, this is where they got their start, and then they become enormously successful. They open stores in multiple locations in the Northeast, etc. And now they're over the 4 limit in the region or nationally. That's not addressed in this law. And it's something it doesn't think about, it's not a future looking law. So that's something that's not addressed. It's also not really clear how this would actually be enforced. It's not clear whether at the time a business gets permits and so forth, is that the point at which they cannot have more than 3, aka this would be the 4th, or is it at the time that they open? So there's a lot of vagueness in here, and Tom has his hand up.
Yeah, and perhaps you were gonna say this, but the most important one in a way is how does the city find out? So there's no, if it's for example, if there's no change of use, it's not going, it's not going before anyone who would say, oh, that's, a business that's elsewhere. So there's no way in the process currently that code enforcement or anybody else could identify that it's a business.
Right.
So that's probably really critical.
Also, do we know how we arrived on that number?
Yeah, yes, originally the proposal was 3. And I think it might have been the state or Columbia County, it might have been the state came back, it might have been Columbia County, I can't remember. But said, and one of the businesses noted was bigger than that there are very local businesses that potentially have more than 3 outlets. And we don't necessarily want to, the feedback was that 3 was too low. And so it was up to 4 to accommodate for truly local places that have more than one store. So I think that's where it came from.
I first realized the problem of later editions when Applestone came to Hudson, because Applestone was growing during that period, which since pulled out everywhere, but it was already getting up to 4 or 5 elsewhere. And we had no mechanism for doing anything about it.
Right. There is language in here about there is some language that if it is determined that they haven't disclosed and everything permits are nullified, etc., etc. But it's kind of it's I think it's not really that tight. And if everybody could just take a moment before our next meeting to go look at this law, the language in the charter I think is identical to it. Look at it, think about the purpose of it, and ways that, and Crystal, any advice you can give us would be very helpful. Ways that we might just reframe it so that it is more explicit and enforced. Right?
Do you have this digitally?
I have it on my computer. I can send it to people. Absolutely. I didn't download the section from the charter. Okay, that's anybody else got more business that they want to bring up?
Did Art just ask about where I can find this law that you're referencing?
And,
Yeah,
It's actually, the local laws, if you go under common council, there's a section for local laws. And then you go
Okay.
under local laws for a particular year. And this
Okay.
one is local law number 3 for 2018. But I will send a copy of it to everybody.
I also.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
It's-
Since we're discussing it today, it could be added even for today's documents.
Yeah, we can put it in. I wasn't sure whether we would get to it, so I didn't send it out, and it was just, right now, it's just something that I don't expect anybody to be in a position to talk about, but I think we should think about it, and when we meet again, have some thoughts on how we would like to improve it.
No, I just mean from like a public perspective, anyone,
What you're
You
saying,
know,
yes.
instead of having to look back, they could just look at it. It was discussed today somewhat, so they could just look at today's documents.
Linda,
Thank
I will send this to you after the meeting so that you can just add it to the list of documents.
Okay.
So if we have nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
I'll second.
good. And any objections?
All right.
None.
Okay, great.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Great. Thanks very much.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night.
And you have to save your transcript before you log out.